cidade da Terra, tanto cosmopolita quanto diversificada, porém de muitas formas surpreendentemente isolada e voltada para si, como se o processo de globalização significasse principalmente reunir gente e riquezas mundiais, sem envolvimento nos profundos conflitos e divisões do mundo.
I think the experience of globalization for Americans, and particularly for New Yorkers, was very lopsided. They thought they could have the benefits of a globalized economy and none of the costs. They thought you could globalize economics, but not politics, not violence. And in a sense, that the tools of globalization, skyscrapers, jets, could only be used for benign purposes. The notion that these tools could be used for destruction in the pursuit of extreme ideological objectives, specifically anti-American, anti-global objectives, had dawned, I think, to relatively few people. And so it came as literally a bolt from the blue when it happened.
Mesmo aparente para a maioria dos americanos, somente após a queda das grandes torres em retrospecto, o paradoxo da globalização pareceu ter chegado a um espetacular auge nas torres gêmeas do World Trade Center, cujos extraordinários 50 anos de história incorporaram todos os temas e assuntos, todas as tensões e valores, todos os paradoxos e contradições da longa e complexa marcha de 400 anos de Nova York em direção ao centro do mundo.
America is part of everyone's imaginative life. Through movies, music, television, and the web. Whether you grow up in Bilbao, Beijing, or Bombay, everyone has a New York in their heads, even if they have never been there. Which is why the destruction of the Twin Towers had such an impact. Timothy Garden Ash, April 9th, 2002.
My love for the towers was in my relation with them, not as an overall appreciation, almost in an architectural sense. My love was for their life. They were alive. Not many people know that. The people who built them know that they were vibrating with the passage of a cloud over the sun, the difference of temperature, the wind. And the skeleton was actually making noise. I discovered that, and at times the tower were asleep, hibernating, and at times they wake up and they cry and they almost yell for help. I think I love them from the inside. I didn't find them beautiful and interesting at first sight, but as I get to know them, as I found out that to build those two monoliths, you had to have a group of insane designer, architects, structural engineer, builders, hundreds of them for years. It became something to love. I love their strength and their arrogance somehow. They were so overlooking the skyline of New York. Somehow anything that is giant and man-made strikes me in an awesome way and calls me. And I cannot see the highest towers being built without wanting to celebrate their birth right there.
Por quase 30 anos, elas ficaram aos pés de Manhattan, duas das maiores e mais conhecidas estruturas da Terra, elevando-se na mais eletrizante e reconhecida silhueta do mundo, o mais poderoso e ambivalente monumento de sua época e, no fim, o mais trágico. Concebidas no vertiginoso período após a Segunda Guerra e subindo com a América, que alçava o poder global nas décadas depois da guerra, estavam destinadas a tornar-se o real e simbólico epicentro de um sistema econômico que dominaria grande parte do planeta. Mais do que qualquer outra estrutura da era, elas estariam ligadas, do início ao fim, às espantosas forças que reformulariam Nova York na segunda metade do século XX, e a forças ainda mais poderosas, impulsionando a América implacavelmente para cima e muito para fora, através de um mundo cada vez mais complexo e interligado.
There was a real sort of magnetic pull that these buildings had around the world. And certainly they were a very convenient symbol for those who would want to destroy us, of capitalism, of the American system, of the 20th century, of modernity, of all of those things. And more than any symbol in America, they said to the world, not just, this is America, but this is a modern place. This is a place of the 20th century. And that made them, I think, a very potent target in a whole different way.
Como todo grande arranha-céu, estavam fadadas a ser uma estrutura de seu tempo e, pela mesma razão, pungentemente fora do tempo, surgindo ao final de uma grande onda de construções, na crista de uma grande mudança, lançadas em um dos mais tumultuados e complexos períodos da história da cidade, e por uma singular combinação de orgulho, ambição, audácia, cobiça, idealismo, engenho e loucura. As colossais torres foram, de muitas formas, as últimas da espécie e um poderoso auge, o estonteante clímax de mais de 70 anos de altas construções na ilha de Manhattan e o último e mais controverso dos projetos de renovação que transformaram Nova York no pós-guerra. O esforço necessário para arrancá-las do chão, para não falar em levantar as maiores estruturas do mundo, projetando-se a mais de 400 metros das sinuosas ruas do mais populoso distrito comercial da Terra, exigiria a maior convergência de poderes públicos e privados que a cidade jamais vira, assim como o envolvimento de seus construtores em todos os conflitos e tensões da época.
I think you should think of the Twin Towers as, in one sense, the moonshot of structural engineering and skyscraper construction. They were unprecedented in the same way that the NASA program, the Apollo program, was in virtually the same era. And they had similar ambitions. Just in terms of quantity, they were the biggest. They were 10 million square feet of space. Nothing had come remotely close to that number in terms of the amount of real estate in one complex. They were the tallest. They were going to have to resist the forces of the wind and gravity in a way that was of a magnitude far greater than anything that had been done before. I mean, you often see projects that are audacious on a technical level, on a political level, on a human level. This project was audacious on all those levels. It was sort of a multi-dimensional exercise in hubris, you might say. In some ways, I think they overreached. But that's the nature of the game when you're talking about audacity and hubris. And in that sense, you just have to say, these things were wonders of the world, and we shall not see their like again.
No fim, a saga de 50 anos do World Trade Center, quando e por que foi construído, como e onde foi erguido, qual o significado das torres e como e por que caíram, contará mais do que se pensa sobre a cidade e o país que lhes serviu de lar, incorporando em sua trajetória as maiores esperanças e mais profundas contradições do salto ao céu de Nova York e dos espantosos 50 anos de expansão da América no mundo. início ao fim, a história do World Trade Center seria uma parábola do poderio americano. Uma parábola das forças reformando Nova York no pós-guerra e das forças reformando o globo.
This was the last great project, I think, of that scale for New York City. And, nothing's happened like it since and probably won't again. It just is a different era in which the public participates much more in choosing the fate of New York and not just a small group of men in a back room that are deciding that they want to do something.
A ideia nasceu nos triunfantes meses após o fim da Segunda Guerra, ao emergir de uma nova ordem baseada em livre comércio a partir do caos da guerra, enquanto Nova York em si emergia como a inquestionável capital do mundo.
Well, 1945 was the end of a period of commercial catastrophe, a period in which trade between the great economies of the world had all but collapsed. And the lesson that American policymakers drew from the disasters of the 1930s and 1940s was very straightforward. The United States must commit itself to the creation of a global free trade order, which would ensure the prosperity of the United States, but also rapid economic growth in the economies of America's principal allies. So after the Second World War, you have the creation of trade, monetary, diplomatic, and military institutions, all fundamentally designed to maintain an open, free-trading world economy.
No outono de 1946, enquanto delegados da nova Organização das Nações Unidas escolhiam um local para seu novo lar, líderes de Nova York sugeriram a construção de um complexo ao sul de Manhattan, um centro de comércio mundial, que explorasse a esperada explosão do comércio internacional e confirmasse a supremacia de Nova York em um vasto e crescente império global.
And the idea was to have a trade mart here. That by setting up big exhibit centers and inviting people from around the world to come and see their goods and their wares would further the interests of a growing world trade. And with that in mind, the state legislature signed to Winthrop Aldrich, the head of Chase Bank, a World Trade Center organization.
And ultimately, the idea of a complex of buildings that they would call the World Trade Center got thrown out because the port interests were still of such clout at that time that they were able to say, if you're going to spend money, you're going to build new piers. But by the time David Rockefeller rises and replaces his uncle, Winthrop Aldrich, as the chief executive at Chase, it's a different place, New York, and the port is already on its way out, and something needs to happen in Lower Manhattan if it's going to regain the status that it once held as the world's financial center and that it was losing.
Levaria mais de 10 anos para que a ideia do World Trade Center decolasse e outros 40 para cumprir as grandiosas promessas do nome. Entretanto, quando pegou impulso ao fim dos anos 50, foi lançada de forma notável por apenas 2 homens, filhos e irmãos de uma das mais poderosas dinastias da Terra. Eles iriam abraçar a ideia não só como glorioso símbolo do comércio mundial, mas como chave de um dos mais controversos e ousados jogos imobiliários da história de Nova York. O esforço para salvar o sul de Manhattan, que menos de 10 anos depois da guerra, entrara em declínio, não só pela queda do porto, mas pelo êxodo dos negócios para o centro da ilha.
Lower Manhattan, which I'll describe as the 2 square miles from Chambers Street down to the Battery, was dying. Companies were moving out, either to mid-Manhattan or really out of New York City. The only new building built since World War II was the Chase Manhattan building. And David Rockefeller was then the chairman of the Chase Manhattan Bank. And so David had an idea. Why not create, using the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, a World Trade Center, whatever that was?
There are different opinions about the role and the motivations of the Rockefellers in Lower Manhattan, but certainly no one deserves more credit or blame than the brothers Rockefeller, David and Nelson, for the changes that came about in downtown in the 1960s. The flagship headquarters of Chase Manhattan Bank had always been downtown since the 18th century. And of course, David Rockefeller, as the head of the Chase Manhattan Bank, had tremendous interests in keeping the financial district secure.
Everybody knows the Chase Bank may be the most powerful bank in the world. David Rockefeller might be the second most powerful person in the United States after the president. They're putting their bets in Lower Manhattan, saying Lower Manhattan either has to be revitalized and rejuvenated, or it's going to enter into a period of terminal decline.
Daqui a pouco, a ilha de Manhattan passa por uma reformulação para abrigar o centro financeiro dos Estados Unidos. Os primeiros projetos para a construção do World Trade Center começam a ser avaliados. Em instantes.
Estamos apresentando Nova York, um documentário. Voltamos a apresentar Nova York, um documentário.
Em 1955, declarando o sul de Manhattan o coração que impulsiona o sangue do capital que sustenta o mundo livre, David entrou na briga. Em novembro, ele surpreendeu Wall Street, anunciando que o Chase construiria uma nova sede de 60 andares, uma quadra acima da Bolsa de Valores, o primeiro arranha-céu a subir na área desde a Depressão. 6 meses depois, convencido de que nem tal gesto bastava para salvar o distrito financeiro, ele reuniu uma forte coalizão de líderes do mercado imobiliário e negociantes, a Downtown Lower Manhattan Association, e insistiu no desenvolvimento de planos mais ambiciosos.
You need bold visions, you need bold action. You can't take small little piecemeal things. That's not the way they operate. Rockefeller Center is not a small piecemeal action. You have to make a profound impact on the environment, and to do it spatially and to do it in terms of the structure of the economy. And it's got to be big scale. It's got to be blazing. Otherwise, it doesn't do the trick.
No outono de 58, o grupo de Rockefeller publicou as recomendações em um relatório de 80 páginas. Um plano para a salvação do sul de Manhattan e um dos mais radicais e abrangentes projetos de construção já idealizados. Exigia a total transformação de toda a área sul e a erradicação de indústrias que por séculos definiram o sul de Manhattan.
They've been talking about getting rid of the piers and getting rid of the port and getting rid of the marketplace for a long time. All of that had gone into abeyance during the Depression and the war. Now it's back on the table, and David, with his own penchant for planning, is in fact entranced by this.
No plano de David, quase nenhum aspecto do distrito portuário ficaria igual. A linha das longas docas que rodeou a ilha por 100 anos seria demolida para abrigar novas construções residenciais e de lazer. As estreitas ruas abertas por holandeses e ingleses seriam alargadas para acomodar novo fluxo de veículos. Centenas de quadras ao longo dos rios East e Hudson seriam arrasadas e remembradas para permitir novos prédios comerciais que abrigariam os serviços burocráticos muito expandidos exigidos pela economia mundial. No centro de tudo, a âncora e emblema do programa, compreendendo 560 quadras, subiria uma versão atualizada da ideia já apresentada 15 anos atrás pelo tio de David Rockefeller e que nos anos vindouros seria a maior ambição de David, o Centro de Comércio Mundial.
I think that David Rockefeller was masterful in his introduction of the World Trade Center idea. And that idea was considered brilliant. He was called the billion-dollar planner by the New York Times. Mayor Wagner said it was wonderful. He, as all Rockefellers, knew how to build a power base and how to create momentum even before he released the idea to the public. And he did that. And so I think, although he only really proposed it, the fact that he proposed it really is why the World Trade Center was built.
Subindo em local, não na zona oeste de Manhattan, mas na leste, e encabeçado na planta original por um único prédio de 60 andares, o vasto complexo de 53 mil metros seria um exemplo, como o Rockefeller Center e a ONU, do que David chamava de grandeza catalisadora, um projeto cujo tamanho e impacto estimulasse a reurbanização da área. Tal escala, como David já sabia, tirou o projeto do alcance mesmo dos mais ambiciosos empreiteiros privados. Nenhum tinha poder ou recursos para assumir um projeto tão vasto.
How are you going to do this? Well, the fact of the matter is, you have to bring in the state. Because another thing the Rockefellers are accustomed to doing is for all the talk about the free market and getting government off our back that characterizes sort of small businessmen, the big people, in fact, understand that subsidies and government support are really a crucial part of the story. So he needs a partner that is, in fact, a heavyweight, and he puts together a concerted program to bring in the one agency which might be able to commit public monies and to have the power of eminent domain that could clear away competing uses and provide the funds to construct new uses that are compatible with this office vision, and that's the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
No século XX, o fluxo de pessoas e coisas entrando e saindo do porto de Nova York foi formado e controlado pela poderosíssima, mas pouco conhecida agência biestadual, a Capitania dos Portos de Nova York e Nova Jersey, que em seus 40 anos de existência construíra todas as pontes e túneis ao longo do rio Hudson, todos os aeroportos da região metropolitana, o enorme terminal rodoviário da zona oeste de Manhattan e os primeiros portos de carga do mundo do lado de Nova Jersey. Nos anos seguintes, sob a liderança de Austin Tobin, diretor astuto e avesso à publicidade, a capitania investiria seu poder, prestígio e imenso orgulho no ambicioso projeto que David Rockefeller iniciara, e logo se veria envolvida no mais desafiador, polêmico e malfadado projeto de toda a sua história.
He identified absolutely with the Port of New York Authority. He'd started off basically as a legal clerk back in the 1920s. He'd grown up with this agency. I think he saw the World Trade Center as the apotheosis of his career. And he saw it as something that could represent what he believed was the greatness of the Port Authority.
The trouble is that the mandate for the Port Authority is trade, is to further international trade in the harbor of New York City. And what David wants them to do really is to get into office building and to make this a financial and real estate center.
The Port Authority was never founded to go into the real estate business, but it's the most profitable business in New York, and they saw great profits and ways of supporting their projects, which up to a certain point you could understand, although I think they should have not gone into the real estate business to begin with.
O questionável equilíbrio entre o objetivo da capitania e o plano de David Rockefeller desestabilizaria o projeto pelos anos seguintes. Por ironia do destino, David Rockefeller logo estaria em posição de superar qualquer oposição ao seu envolvimento, ao menos dentro da agência. Em 1º de janeiro de 1959, seu irmão Nelson foi empossado governador do estado de Nova York e logo começou a encher a capitania de correligionários, altos executivos de Wall Street, que apoiavam a visão do irmão, um sul de Manhattan de colarinho branco. Na primavera de 60, questões sobre a propriedade do envolvimento da capitania começaram a desaparecer. Austin Tobin, a pedido de David, mandou a equipe preparar plantas preliminares para um complexo de 464.500 metros quadrados ao longo do Rio East. Com imensas reservas públicas e privadas a seu dispor, os Rockefeller fizeram uma jogada imobiliária de $500 milhão parecer não só plausível, mas inevitável.
There was a big fallacy, though, in this whole project. The real problem with Lower Manhattan was not that it didn't have enough office space. The problem was that it was hard to get to, particularly from the suburbs where a lot of business executives and bankers lived. And it was not a particularly appealing neighborhood in a general way, in that there were no places to eat, few places to shop, no cultural facilities to speak of, no places to live. All the things that make a neighborhood interesting and varied and meaningful as a part of the city weren't there. And so the World Trade Center violated the first law of economics, really. It added to the supply of what there was already too much of, which was office space, without, in fact, doing anything to change the demand. So it was wrong from its conception. But nobody quite got that.
To me, it was a sense of building, creating something that it's almost at the limit of what human beings can create, you know? I like that raw power. I like that sort of feeling that they were our Godzilla, you know, that they stood up there, that they say, so what, you know? We're ugly, so what, you know? And they weren't, you know, because they were one thing one minute and they were another thing the other minute, you know, so you couldn't pass a judgment on them. You know, those would condemn them on an aesthetic basis, you know, were absolutely wrong because it depended so much on how close you were, how far you were from them. Whether you saw them in the late afternoon, whether you saw them in the morning, whether you saw them in winter, whether you saw them in summer. So there was always a different feeling about them. I think at some deeper level, there was the connection of the water to the sky. And not very strong in mythology and all of this, but I think that played a very important role. Here you saw that somehow we were connected to something not just larger than New York, but larger than the earth itself, you know.
When the World Trade Center was conceived, the intention was not to build the world's tallest buildings. In fact, the preliminary designs on the east side were 60 or 70 stories. The first studies on the west side were that. And then this sort of hubris, I think, took over, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and they kept thinking they could do anything, and nobody said no.
Às 6:30 da tarde, de 13 de fevereiro de 1962, o recém-eleito governador de Nova Jersey, Richard Hughes, sancionou o histórico projeto de lei Hughes-Tubbs World Trade Center. Em 3 semanas, o governador Nelson Rockefeller o imitou. Austin Tobin já disparara a complexa máquina das 6.000 pessoas de sua agência, criando uma nova divisão dentro do império da capitania, o World Trade Office, e nomeando o incansável e leal engenheiro Guy Tozzoli, de 32 anos, como supervisor de todos os aspectos da imensa operação. Escolha o que há de melhor na capitania, disse Tobin ao jovem diretor, pois este será nosso maior projeto.
I was given the job in February of 1962 to plan, to design, to construct, to operate the World Trade Center of New York. And there was only one thing to achieve what David Rockefeller and Nelson Rockefeller wanted the Port Authority to do. I recommended to the board you could only do one thing. You had to build what the Reader's Digest called the largest building project since the Egyptian pyramids. There was no other way in this city, because this was the greatest city in the world. And it had to be something that people would pay attention to. The second thing we had to consider was it had to be affordable. So when they gave me the job, they said, by the way, it has to be self-supporting. So we're going to capitalize every paperclip that you use. So I had hanging over me like the sword of Damocles, etc. You will make this thing work.
Desde o começo, os riscos e os desafios eram enormes, muitos surgidos dos imperativos concorrentes do próprio projeto. O mesmo plano exigia que o complexo fosse lucrativo e restringia demais o leque de locatários, 3/4 dos quais teriam de lidar com o comércio mundial para satisfazer o objetivo da Capitania dos Portos. Quando estudos mostraram que a procura seria modesta, Tobin mandou Tozzoli aumentar e muito o programa de construções, até um inédito total de 930 mil metros quadrados, quase 5 vezes a área útil do Empire State.
They knew that it was going to fail. They were told that this was going to fail unless it was enormous. They knew that Lower Manhattan was not going to come up again unless they did something so bold and outrageous that the people of Midtown couldn't ignore them. And the Port Authority listened to that, and they went with it, and they built the biggest buildings in the world because they knew that they had to do that or else it was going to be a lost investment.
A visão de Austin Tobin começava a se expandir quando o matreiro diretor de Relações Públicas da capitania, de 42 anos, distribuiu um memorando interno fatal.
It's said that the person who was credited early on in the project for coming up with the idea of the world's tallest building came out of the publicity department, that it was a woman named Lee Jaffe who sent a memo among the men who were in charge of the project saying, well, as long as we're going to make them 100 stories, why not go that extra few hundred feet and secure their place as the world's tallest?
This will be a journey into the cosmic unknown.
You know, America has always believed in bigness, and I think we particularly believed in it in the 60s when the World Trade Center was conceived. You know, bigger and bigger American things, bigger and bigger doses of American power were going to solve anything. It was the age when all the cars were gargantuan and had fins. It was the age when we were sending troops into Vietnam. The age of going to the moon. Exactly. And its architectural equivalent was this notion of bigger and bigger buildings all the time. We've always also romanticized height in a very wonderful way in New York. I mean, that's very much part of our DNA, is to just build bigger and taller all the time.
Notícias da ambição construtora da capitania corriam e uma febre se alastrou pela equipe de Austin Tobin.
And so, the first thing to do was to find the right architect. What I wanted was a great architect. It just had to be the greatest project in the world if it were to succeed. And we interviewed virtually everybody in the world of consequence. And to the teams that I sent out to find out what architects did, the first stipulation I gave them was, try to find somebody who you think is young enough to live for 20 years, because I was sure that this project, as we conceived it, would take at least 20 years to finish. And it actually took more than that.
No fim, dispensando toda a elite de arquitetos de Nova York, Tozzoli escolheu quase um estranho, um complicado arquiteto de 49 anos, baseado em Detroit, chamado Minoru Yamasaki, cujas elegantes estruturas ornamentais estavam então na moda, e cujo projeto para o World Trade Center seria, enfim, um dos aspectos mais polêmicos.
Yamasaki was a very strange choice for the architect of the world's tallest buildings, because he had never been a commercial architect, and especially of skyscrapers or of high-rises. His previous buildings had been mid-rises of 20 or so stories. He was not one of those architects who was particularly emphatic about a structural engineering solution. One thinks of his earlier work more in a decorative vein. He was interested in the play of light and shadow on the surface of a building, so that his previous buildings seemed almost delicate in scale and wholly out of proportion to the ambition of the commission of the Trade Center.
The Port Authority thought if we're going to build, such an enormous buildings, that if they could hire someone who could combine the productive, modern office building with an ornamental touch, that was what they wanted. They also wanted someone who was not so old and established and also set in his ways that they couldn't, twist his arm and get him to agree to do what they wanted to do. They wanted someone who was creative, but they also wanted someone that was going to listen to Guy Tozzoli and to Austin Tobin, and they got that in Minoru Yamasaki.
Daqui a pouco, você vai conhecer o imponente projeto de Yamasaki para o World Trade Center e vai ver a polêmica que este projeto causou na cidade. Em instantes.
Estamos apresentando Nova York, um documentário. Voltamos a apresentar Nova York, um documentário.
Minoru Yamasaki is hired in the end of August in 1962. And he's given this unnegotiable standard by Guy Tozzoli and Austin Tobin, which is that the net square foot of rentable space, including offices and retail, must be 10 million. It's called the program, and it's non-negotiable, and he knows that he cannot even, have a conversation with Guy about this.
Era um programa aterrorizante do ponto de vista do tamanho, lembrou Yamasaki. Você fugia em pânico antes de se adaptar. Por meses, ele buscou a forma correta para o projeto, trabalhando numa escala jamais tentada por outro arquiteto, lutando para reconciliar sua sensibilidade artística com o avassalador tamanho do programa, tentando uma maquete após a outra. Ele pensou em 10 estruturas menores, depois uma gigantesca, mas sempre voltava à imagem de 2 torres esguias, uma o reflexo da outra. Um projeto que ele esperava que combinasse as exigências práticas da capitania com a elegância escultural do trabalho de seu maior mentor, o arquiteto alemão Mies van der Rohe.
So he must have done 50 or more different models, limited by the 16-acre site that we had. And finally he sent word back to me, it's time for you to come out. I want to show you the one I like the best. He had done Twin Towers and a plaza about the size of Piazza San Marco, just a little smaller than that, and it had a hotel and it had a customs house. Everything around it was a lovely, lovely design. So I said to Yama, when I saw that, I said, this is a very fine design, but does it meet my program? No, he said, it's 2 million feet short. I said, why is that? Well, he said, the towers are 80 floors high. He said, you can't build a building taller than 80 floors. I said, why not? Well, he said, because the configuration, the elevators take too much space, and that's why no one has ever done that. And I remember saying to him, you know, Yama, President Kennedy is going to put a man on the moon. You're going to figure out a way for me to build the world's tallest buildings, because that'll get us the other 2 million feet of space. We'll just make those towers higher.
Yamasaki continued to resist going up to 110 stories. And he ultimately accepted and embraced the towers at their height and began, to become the most famous architect of his generation briefly, and was on the cover of Time magazine because he was building the 2 tallest towers. But he was never entirely comfortable, I don't think, with the height that the towers reached.
Apesar de discordar do tamanho que Tozzoli exigia e que talvez comprometesse o impacto estético das torres, Yamasaki desistiu e, após reunir-se com os engenheiros, concordou que o problema dos elevadores poderia ser resolvido. Ele aumentou a altura das 2 estruturas. Em 18 de janeiro de 64, quando o projeto final foi divulgado numa coletiva no Hilton de Nova York, os funcionários e repórteres presentes ficaram pasmos. O novo programa de Yamasaki mostrava 2 torres idênticas, cada uma com 110 andares, 30 metros mais altas do que o edifício Empire State. Cada andar tinha mais de 4.000 metros quadrados e cada torre dobrava a área útil do marco da era da depressão de Osmead. Até Nelson Rockefeller se espantou com a planta e, alegre, comentou com o assessor: essas torres farão o prédio de David parecer um mictório. Um editorial do New York Times, que circulou no dia seguinte, foi mais sóbrio. O impacto em Nova York, por bem ou por mal, econômica e arquitetonicamente, terá de ser enorme.
So the Twin Towers started as 1 tower. They became Twin Towers. They kept getting bigger and bigger, and they really became an ego trip. Suddenly it became possible for the Port Authority to build the tallest buildings in the world, which is the most ephemeral of all titles. It's taken away from you very quickly and always will be. But there is something that is inside of human beings that wants to reach for the skies. And I'd like to think that it was that romantic and that spiritual and that symbolic.
A divulgação da imensa maquete de Yamasaki marcou um ponto crucial na história do World Trade Center. Dias depois da coletiva no Hilton, uma chuva de protestos abateu-se sobre a sede da capitania, levando ao auge a tensão e os conflitos que há anos se acumulavam e ameaçando deter o gigantesco projeto antes que alçasse voo.
I started out not liking the World Trade Center because the World Trade Center was the Conrad Veidt of buildings. Conrad Veidt was the man you love to hate. The World Trade Center were the buildings you love to hate. I was very much around when the process of the clearing of the site and the protests about the destruction of that kind of funky agglomeration of street patterns and activities around it were there. I resented its massive dumbness, its huge size, its the fact that it tipped the balance of the skyline to the west in an unnatural way, if you can call something like a man-made skyline of Manhattan natural.
Por 2 anos, à medida que as torres cresciam na mente de Yamazaki e as ambições da capitania subiam, uma guerra pelo corpo e pela alma do sul de Manhattan rugia nas ruas abaixo.
The Trade Center was realized at a time when there was what could be described as a paradigm shift about architecture and urban development. Preservation was a growing sentiment among a wide number of people in New York and other places at this time. Remember, the Pennsylvania Station protest was 63, the destruction 66. It's just those years the Trade Center is being hatched and developed. So you have these two models of urbanism or urban growth coming head to head in the at the Trade Center site. So people were very much divided as to whether this project should even happen.
When word is clear that the Port Authority is going to subsidize this enormous trade complex, which is now only very marginally has anything to do with the port, because in fact they're moving the port, you know? So the old rationale is crumbling. You get a complex of interest, particularly the people who own the Empire State Building, who say, wait a minute, foul ball. You're in fact using government public dollars to underwrite a massive new complex of office space. What's going to happen to the rental market? It's going to not only destroy downtown, because you're going to build far more office space than you actually need, but it's going to mess up my property up here in the Empire State Building. So they bring suits and they try to stop it.
A polêmica ferveu por mais de meia década nos tribunais e fora deles. A capitania combateu um opositor atrás do outro, inclusive, em certa hora, a própria cidade, que perderia milhões em impostos imobiliários e estações de TV, temendo que as torres bloqueassem o sinal.
My mother, who loved television, she said, you know, you're my son and I love you very much. But I must tell you, if you're going to hurt television reception in this area, you better stop that project of yours right now. And I knew I had big problems. In any case, we did. We actually negotiated a deal with the television people and they moved down to our place. And it all worked out.
No fim, a mais tenaz, amarga e melancólica resistência ao World Trade Center viria das centenas de pequenos negociantes cujas lojas ladeavam as antigas calçadas de Radio Row e cujo meio de vida poderia ser extinto pelo imenso complexo.
Well, that was the urban renewal formula of the 60s that was so disastrous in cities across the country. The idea of clearing out, supposedly getting rid of blight, which unfortunately was a synonym for history and for small business, and then to substitute these superblocks with huge buildings. The real estate community had an expression, ripe for redevelopment. You cut off, you closed, oh, there's an official word for that too, you demapped wonderful old streets with small buildings that gave you the history and the flavor and the continuity of the city. And you put them together for a superblock. For the World Trade Center, 14 historic streets became 2 superblocks.
Quando os limites do novo local na Zona Oeste foram divulgados, lojistas e comerciantes iniciaram feroz resistência aos planos da Capitania dos Portos.
Our over 1,000 businessmen in this area, 13 square blocks of Lower Manhattan, we will fight this with all the strength that we have in order to preserve free enterprise in Manhattan. We also feel very reluctant about our city giving up 13 square blocks to the Port Authority.
We have here a 13-block area, a thriving business area that will be taken away from the city of New York forever and for all time. An area in which the people who are the elected people and should have what to say will have no say ever again in this particular area.
Na liderança estava um combatente lojista chamado Oscar Nadel, chamado o Rei de Portland Street, determinado a fazer todo o possível para evitar que a capitania lhe tomasse o negócio.
last time that I might say this with respect to the Port Authority. Stay out of private enterprise. You were told to build bridges and tunnels and airports. Build them. Stay in your business and we'll stay in ours.
Com o furor sobre Radio Row chegando ao auge, protestos contra projetos de reforma urbana em larga escala ganhavam força na cidade. 10 quadras ao norte, os que se opunham a Robert Moses obtiveram um triunfo na luta para deter a via expressa sul de Manhattan. No fim, até a onda de ativismo pelas raízes de Nova York mostrou não ser páreo para o poder da capitania dos portos ou para a fantástica habilidade política de Austin Tobin.
We're talking here about things in the public interest in a free country that concern not a few store owners on a block down in this area, but we're concerning something that's not tens of thousands or hundred thousands of millions of people and their livelihoods in this area and the whole future of this area and its great port, which is the foundation of its welfare in the future. And those are the issue here, and not any phony issue of the Port Authority wanting to get into the real estate business, which is the last thing in the world it has the slightest interest in.
Austin Tobin wanted to win so bad. There's no underestimating that internal fire. You can't run an agency like the Port Authority, especially in those times, and have the successes that it had and not have that fire inside. Austin Tobin wanted it real bad. Now, on the technical side, Tobin was just a lot smarter than the people he was playing against.
No fim, a capitania venceu em toda a linha. Em março de 66, a Corte de Apelações de Nova York fez cair o último desafio à legalidade das condenações sofridas. Na clara manhã de 21 de março de 1966, enquanto opositores do projeto, incapacitados, olhavam, a primeira parede de tijolos de Radio Row, em pé desde a Guerra Civil, começou a desabar.
They lose. To make a long story short, the powers that are assembled in favor of remaking Lower Manhattan triumph, and one by one, these competing uses are literally driven into the sea or pushed on somewhere else.
I remember seeing Cortlandt Street being shoveled off to become landfill for what became Battery Park City. I mean, literally bulldozers knocked down the old houses. Just tipped them over, smashed them over like they were big fists were being leveled from the sky somehow. Among the many things that were lost on September 11th were the final Polaroid photographs of the houses on Cortlandt Street with their prices that were labeled on them by the assessors, what the owners were going to get paid, you know, $9,000, $12,000, $18,000, whatever it was. All those original Polaroids, no negatives, were lost in one of the buildings on September 11th. So that even that record of it is gone.
Who's afraid of the big bad buildings? Everyone. Because there are so many things about gigantism that we just don't know. The gamble of triumph or tragedy at this scale, and ultimately it is a gamble, demands an extraordinary payoff. The Trade Center towers could be the start of a new skyscraper age, or the biggest tombstones in the world. Ada Louise Huxtable, 1966.
No próximo programa, você vai acompanhar a construção dos mais altos edifícios da época, o World Trade Center, um desafio da engenharia que causou um tremendo impacto em Nova York. Não perca, até lá.